Tony Gonçalves, Town of Lewisboro Supervisor, and with me today I have Kevin Kelly, our building inspector. And today we're going to talk to Kevin about his role as building inspector, and I have a few questions for him. So Kevin, let's start. So tell us about your background and how long you've been serving as the building inspector for the Town of Lewisboro.
So my original background was I'm a licensed architect in multiple states, ran construction and sales for one of the largest builders in the country. Decided I wanted to segue into the government field and try to help a municipality, and became certified as a state building inspector a number of years ago. Helped out another one of our communities for a relatively short time while I was working at this developer. And then Tony hired me about 2.5 years ago, and we've been the building inspector ever since.
Okay. And so from your experience working the last 2.5 years for Lewisboro, what are the most common types of building permits that you're processing?
Well, there's probably two different facets. You have the small generators. Lots of people are switching over to propane backup because of the grid, and removal of oil tanks and getting that certified because all of these houses are aging out for their tanks, and being proactive to get them out before they do leak is a smart thing to do. Then you probably then have the small renovations, again, some of the older houses, new kitchens, new bathrooms, dormers, another garage, accessory structures, and then lastly would be new homes. We are limited on inventory of how many lots are actually in the community. So that's the last, but the ones that have been going up lately have been rather substantial houses.
Okay. And you touched on a little bit on my next question, which is with regards to the nature of the projects that are being done here in Lewisboro. Do you see a trend in terms of the types of projects?
The houses are getting more and more complicated, much more detail, more social spaces, bigger open spaces, bigger spans, which requires a lot more structure. Footprints are getting larger. The lots that are remaining are usually more challenging. As a result, that will bring in our environmental people for looking at how we're going to affect wetlands. So that is probably the biggest changes I see. You probably were an average of 2,600 square feet years ago, and now we have houses as big as 7,000, 8,000, 9,000 square feet being built right this moment.
Thanks for that, Kevin. So I know that we've had, and I get the occasional, where folks have questions about, at which point should they reach out to the building inspector or the building department, and sometimes they reach out after the fact. But what are the most common mistakes that homeowners are making when they start a building renovation project, a building or a renovation project?
The common comment will be, I didn't know I needed a permit. We try to implore everybody to reach out to the building department. Happy to meet with anybody before they even file for a permit. I typically have meetings every morning with at least one homeowner or contractor. What are we looking for? What do they need? And to try to guide them down what I call the roadmap to make this as seamless as possible. And then when they do submit, we tend to turn permits in what I would consider record time, because we run this substantially different than most building inspectors do in other municipalities, i.e. When you review drawings, typically most inspectors write a comment letter, mail it back to either the homeowner or the developer or the contractor, and there's a long lag time versus picking up the phone, calling the architect or the contractor and say, these are the following things we're going to need to eliminate the problems down the road. And it seems to be working quite well. But as you said, the most common is they just start without any permits, or just had the assumption that they didn't need any, and sometimes their realtor told them, sometimes their friend told them. We've had it on the website. We've reached out to as many people as we can, and by having weekly meetings every day with people, it seems to help that situation.
Right. Okay. Yeah, and of course and you and I have spoken about this. The number one reason people should come to you and get the proper permit for the work they're doing is safety, right? Not only compliance with building code, both New York State and local code, but also it's for their safety.
Absolutely, it's about, I'm all about liability and fire. We've had a couple cases where people have done work without permits. They've had house fires. They were devastating to the family. Their insurance companies were trying to renege on paying them because they didn't have a permit. And it's so much easier just to come in here, and I will be happy to walk them through the process, tell them if I think it's a good idea or bad idea, or give them an alternative to try to be more cost effective at the end of the day.
And just based on feedback that I've received, you provide a fair and you have a service-oriented approach to enforcement, and helping the applicant or the homeowner with getting to where they want to be at the end of the day. But how do you balance the need for safety and compliance with the desire to support the homeowner and the builder?
Well, we will always give a homeowner a roadmap, even if they went astray, how to correct the problem, okay? And we also try to educate them on what could go wrong, and they do go wrong at times. Mm-hmm. And to just give them, as I said, that roadmap, if we do X, Y, and Z, we can get back onto the straight and narrow, and as a result, not have a problem. And most people don't even think about the liability. You know, they build a deck with not the proper railings. You know, they put a room on and they don't put smoke, fire, and carbon monoxide on. And some of these things are very easy, basic things, but they just don't think about it. Or they think, oh, I have one smoke detector in the house, and they never realized that they needed it in every bedroom. They needed it 12 feet outside the bedroom. And they just said, I have never had any idea that I needed it. So what I've gone and done, even if I'm doing an inspection for something totally else on a person's property, I offer to go through the house and give them an inventory of what they have, what they're missing, and ask them to update it and send me a photograph that they just have corrected the situation so they don't have a problem.
Right. Okay. And what advice would you give to residents planning to start a home improvement project in the next year?
Please come to see me first. I think it will be fruitful for them, more economical for them. We just had a couple recently that live in town. She's been in the house a few years. They have great equity in the house. She wanted to put a whole second floor on the house. The house only has a 2-bedroom septic. It will never get approved from the health department for a larger septic system. She just doesn't have the space for it. And instead of spending $600,000 on an addition, I suggested that they think about selling that house and look at another house. And ultimately, they called me a week later and said they thought about it all weekend and said, you were right, and we made an offer on another house. You know, thank you very much. So it's not just about the fees. It's really trying to give the homeowner the right information, because sometimes they're too close and they just don't see what they're doing. And the last thing I want to see them do is start a construction process, and it always runs more money than people think it does, and they get into trouble that they can't finish the home, and then they're in a bad situation.
Right. Okay, have a couple more questions. Looking ahead, are there any updates to building codes or permit procedures that residents should be aware of?
Well, let's do the easy one first. The health department is requiring pump outs. Everybody needs to have their septic system pumped out every 5 years. So what we incorporated with my team, which is an amazing group of people in my office, that every time somebody wants a permit for regardless of anything, that they need to supply us with a copy of a receipt that they've had their septic pumped out over the last 5 years, which is the requirement by Westchester County. What that does, it gives us an inventory when the county does audit us that we can show, because we issue somewhere between 900 and 1,000 permits a year, that we've touched that many people, and we've covered that because, Lewisboro is a very environmentally sensitive area. We have lots of wetlands, lots of restrictions. The lakes are high on our priority list, and it's a way to make sure that everybody's compliant, and we're ultimately doing them a favor, because if it fails, it always fails at the worst possible time.
Right.
Okay?
Okay. Last question. Have you seen any interesting or unusual projects lately that stand out for you?
Let me just circle back for 1 second. Code is changing, okay? Very important. New York State building code is based on the 2020 code right now. It actually was established in 2018. It has not changed. They've been working on updating the code, and a massive revision will take place January 1st of this coming year. Energy code will change, building codes will change. I implore every contractor and every contractor I talk to download the information from the state to start educating themselves with it, because what was approved this year clearly will not be approved next year. This municipality does not do the stretch code, but what you'll see in the new code requirement, especially for energy, we're going beyond the stretch code, and glass will change, energy values will change, and transitioning into all electric and out of fossil fuels. So that's the biggest major change probably in the last 20 years.
Okay. And for folks watching this, the stretch code is the more stringent energy code to make a home more efficient.
Correct.
More energy efficient.
And it's really about the glass. That's where the biggest loss of energy is, and the U value is a much higher rating than the non-stretch code. So as a result, the cost of replacement windows and new construction will go up for glass replacement no matter what.
Right. Okay. Very good. So you mentioned your team. So
yes.
I think to cap this discussion off, I'd like to thank you and your team. You have Kara, Sarah,
and Kelly.
And
Kelly.
Kelly.
And then you
have
have
the
a
intern.
volunteer, Clayton,
Right.
who is an amazing source, also an architect, has decided to work part-time for us, as a volunteer basis. He's very good, on technology, and has been a real asset to us. Sarah's been the longest tenured person in the building department. Amazing. We would be totally...
Kara, you mean?
Yes.
Kara. Longest, yeah.
Yes, she is amazing. Never gets rattled, and our phones are constantly ringing. We brought in 2 part-times to assist her, Sarah and Kelly, and they are a total asset to the community. And I've had many people say that our building department is one of the most friendly building departments out there, that we always go to the extra mile just to try to help the homeowner.
So actually, I have one more question. So this is, and I promise this is the last one. In the case of emergencies, someone's water heater springs a leak. Tell us about those emergency situations.
And we've had those. I've had calls from you, even on a weekend, where a tree came down, put a hole in the roof, hot water heater failed. It's always the middle of the winter. Emergency permits are turned within 24 hours. Sometimes why they wait. We're here to try to help the public, not hurt the public, and we will deal with inspections afterwards. That we've even gone to the point where if it's a contract that we recognize, we've told them in advance, go ahead, do the work. We'll schedule an inspection that Monday morning, and we'll deal with the permits and the applications. And first is the homeowner to make sure that they're taken care of, and that's the priority in our office.
Right. Excellent. Very good. Thank you. This is Kevin Kelly, our building inspector, and I'd like to thank Kevin and his team, Kara, Sarah, Kelly, and Clayton, for the wonderful job that they do for the residents of Lewisboro. And if anyone has any questions about any work whatsoever that they're looking to do at their home, The phone number for the building department is 914-763-3060.
You're watching Lewisboro Community Television, Channel 20.